Welcome to the Morning Scramble. The talk continues. Thank you so much for being our audience. My guest co-host today is Dr. David Hancock. You know him from the show as a guest co-host and a frequent guest. Every other Friday almost, or once a Friday a month.
Yeah.
We talk to you about...
I sit over there and then I sit over there.
Yeah, yeah.
I move around.
You warm both chairs.
I do.
Which is the easiest chair? I was asked that once. Which is
That's
the
a good
easiest
question.
chair to sit in?
I kind of like this one because
answer?
we're going to talk with some amazing guests here today. And over there I get to talk my passion and my profession. So it's kind of, but over here I get to learn more. Over there I just share what I already know.
I totally agree with you. I've been in both chairs and I've been asked the question. And this chair is undoubtedly the easiest one. That is the hardest chair to be in.
Yeah,
yes.
It can be.
As we know, I only do things that are out of the norm. Yesterday...
Very paranormal kind of a gal.
Yesterday, all the dentists in town, including my own dentist, was at a convention in Phoenix. So the night before, I cracked a veneer. And so nice timing. So everybody watching the show yesterday knows that that was happening. My dentist, his wife, /assistant was so kind. She took me in yesterday, got me in. She called the dentist. He said, get her in, get her on, do this. So if you need a dentist, my dentist is the one to go to, Dr. Umali, and he is at 802 Shimmer Drive. And I can give you that phone number, 778-2421.
She sold on this guy.
Yes, that was very nice of him to do that.
Understandably so.
I mean, I had a tooth falling out of my mouth during the show. With us, Alan Dean Foster, Lynn Rush. Alan Dean Foster, of course, science fiction author, and Lynn Rush, paranormal. You know, it said paranormal romance author. That's kind of two areas that you don't often put together in your mind, but you do it very successfully.
Well, thank you. It's a passion, and I love romance. I mean, who doesn't love the first kiss, the first date? Throw in a little paranormal action in there, it's even better.
That first kiss, do you remember that one, Dean? Alan, do you remember the first kiss?
Of course, everybody remembers their first kiss. Her name was Michelle Wolf. I was in the 6th grade. I asked her out on a date, and this actually was a paranormal experience for me because I had no idea what I was doing. And my mother insisted on driving us around for the end of the date.
That's a paranormal experience in itself.
So I'm trying to get my first kiss in the back of my mother's car while she's driving in the front, as if there wasn't enough pressure. But I remember it being okay.
Now I know why you're an author. It's those facts that stick.
That's right. Got a good memory for that stuff.
Talking about the two genres, I mean, they're close yet not close. And you two would be the best to tell us, how are they close and how are they different? Lynn?
Well, like you said earlier when we talked, sci-fi is what might be possible, okay? But the fantasy part, not so much. And paranormal falls right in between, which is what I like.
That's a really good, I never thought of that. Because a lot of the things that were in the Star Trek and Star Wars, or not so much Star Wars, but Star Trek, the talking computers and that kind of stuff. And my wife is a Trekkie, and I never was so much one, but a lot of that stuff is happening. So that's the science fiction, but the paranormal and the fantasy is a little bit further down the road, or maybe never going to happen.
Let's talk Star Wars and start. Go ahead, I didn't interrupt.
Yeah, no. The interesting thing about the paranormal to me is that it's been around for thousands of years.
Okay.
Whereas science fiction is a comparatively recent phenomenon in most cases. Modern science fiction is considered to have begun with Jules Verne and then with H.G. Wells. So we're only going back less than a couple of hundred years, really. Whereas people have been dealing with things they couldn't explain for thousands and thousands of years and coming up with explanations for them. And so paranormal is a much older genre than science fiction.
And the explanations for that, don't you think, Alan and Lynn, have varied as many times as were many people who were experiencing the paranormal? Star Trek, of course, Star Trek kicked it off, and then came Star Wars. I just happen to be more of a fan of, I like them both, but Star Trek was what initiated all of this.
Well, the thing about Star Trek and Star Wars, Star Trek more obviously than Star Wars, but also Star Wars to a certain extent, is they both give positive versions of the future. There's a lot of what's called dystopian science fiction. which is, you know, we're going to have a nuclear war tomorrow, everybody's going to die, things like The Road by Cormac McCarthy. And Star Trek and Star Wars both offer optimistic endings, optimistic conclusions. People are very hungry for that. They're hungry for anything that gives them a positive version of the future of their life. I think the paranormal is true of that too. People read it for optimistic reasons, wouldn't you say?
Well, especially with the happily ever after. You know, in a true romance, you're going to have the happily ever after. It's known as the HEA. And that's what I love, because I'm a romantic at heart, so.
Yeah.
And you know, we're talking Star Trek, of course, on TV, and then Star Wars and Twilight Zone and Outer Limits on TV, also in that area of time when it kicked that imagination in, don't you think?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Twilight Zone, which I consider the best written show that was ever on television, where they did wonderful things with...
I have to agree with that. I've never thought about that.
With negative budgets. Everything depended on the writing and the acting. They had no money for special effects. But they did both science fiction and pure fantasy and the paranormal. And they managed to encompass it all in the same show.
And wrapped it up in Rod Serling.
That's right.
Yes.
And then
absolutely.
control the TV. Do not attempt to adjust your TV. We are controlling everything you see and hear for the next... Wow, I can't remember.
Clever.
I remember that.
I know, I didn't remember that, but it's clever. Maybe he's been on before. I think we should indicate to our viewers what his background is in terms of Star Trek and
yes,
Star Wars.
please speak to that.
I think that that's really germane to what's going on, and maybe for the next segment, but
Alan, yes, all those
I
thoughts.
think that that's really important
We
stuff.
have to go to a commercial break. When we come back, more with Alan Dean Foster and Lynn Rush. You stay right there.
That's appropriate.